Hello, my fellow nerds, and thanks again for watching another episode of Nerd Boy Gaming. I am Nerdboy81. Today, in this video, I thought I would do something just a little bit different and share with you guys my top 10 games. These are the games that have had the biggest impact on me as a gamer. I mean, whether it be from the number of hours I've put into them, the enjoyment levels, or just how they defined me as a gamer or pushed me towards a certain genre of game. So I thought we'd dive in, have a little bit of fun, and talk about my top 10 games. Now, let's get started with number 10. It was a game that came out in the early 90s on the Sega Genesis, and that is Shining Force. For me, Shining Force, if I did a top 15 game, it would be number 15. If I did a top 20, it would be number 20. It's a game that will always be on my top whatever list because it defined a genre for me. It's the first game that I can recall playing where I really truly got into role-playing games or an RPG. This is a strategy RPG where you are a hero protecting the light from the darkness. It's a turn-based combat game where strategy plays a part, kind of like chess. And when I was about 11 years old was the first time I played this game, and it certainly became something that has stuck with me. I can still, to this moment, hear the music in the battle scenes, the dun 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 dun. It's just, I can hear it. It just resonates with me. It was the first game where you really got to explore, or for me, it was one of my first games I got to play where I got to talk to people, explore, build up an army, and then go into battle and have to be strategic in the way that you approached it. When the hero dies, you have to start the level over, and that is a big pain in the butt, especially after a 30 or 45 minute combat where you're at the very end, last couple people, and you move the hero into the wrong spot and he gets ambushed and destroyed. It is rough. It can be a rough way to end a combat. But this game, for me, has always stood a place in my top gaming just because of what it was. Now, I never played the Shining Force 2, so maybe one day that'll be something I do here. But the Shining Force, Sega Genesis, early 90s, number 10 on my list. Moving to number 9. Now, before the Shining Force, all I played really was sports games. I played a lot of baseball, football. This is probably pre-Madden anyway, but football, NBA, NHL, a little bit of soccer, definitely played some golf, a little Mario Golf up in there. Always really enjoyed sports games. I was just kind of an athletic little kid. Of all those games, number 9, MLB The Show, has kind of stood as the creme de la creme. It's the one I still go back to all the time. I'm a big baseball guy, so for me, MLB The Show had to have a place on here. I wanted to represent at least sports games at some level, and MLB The Show is probably my favorite baseball game that I consistently play. In fact, at one point, I owned a PlayStation specifically for MLB The Show because it was only a PlayStation exclusive. But now that it's on Xbox, I've been able to switch back to Xbox. And so for me, MLB The Show is a great game. I like to play Road to the Show. I typically do that more than I do building a season or managing a team. I tend to take a single character, play through seasons. Honestly, I just want to be a hitter where I won't even worry about base running or fielding. I'll turn those things off and I'll just go to town hitting. Other times I'll do limited plays and some hitting. And then I typically always also create a pitcher and then try to run a season with them. The pitcher seasons, while the games last longer to pitch, the seasons are much faster, so you can get through a season quicker. But MLB The Show, for me, is the sports entry in my top 10. This next game is the first open world game I played, and that would be The Legend of Zelda, and all the Zelda series to come. It's hard for me to say that this only is number 8 on my list because this game had such an impact on me as a youth. I remember that gold cassette pushing it into that Nintendo Entertainment System and seeing that boot up screen, The Legend of Zelda. I'm not going to put too much gameplay behind this because Nintendo is notorious for copywriting and demonetizing, so I'm just going to put up a few screenshots. But The Legend of Zelda was a special game. It was like that first open world game. Now remember, back when these games came out, there wasn't really internet or companions on your companion guides on your phone where you can, have the app running and it tells you whatever's happening in game. So I spent countless hours running around, burning bushes, bombing cliff sides, trying to uncover the secrets, pushing rocks, right? Looking for hidden stairs and different things in the game. And then, of course, when the Nintendo 64 came out, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. I spent so much time playing Majora's Mask. And then with the Nintendo Switch, Breath of the Wild. I have not played Tears of the Kingdom yet, but Breath of the Wild was a great game. In fact, I got almost all the way up to beating Ganon, and for some reason, I just haven't done that. Maybe I just don't want the fun to end. I think I still had like 100 seeds still to find, but for the most part, I really enjoyed those games. So for me, Legend of Zelda, that series, that is always special. It will always be in my gaming top 10. And the games themselves can be so much fun. And it definitely belongs on this list. Coming in at number 7 was a game, when I started this list, I thought came out a lot earlier. And then I kind of started thinking about when I first played it. I remember actually going to a Hollywood Video or a Blockbuster. I can't remember exactly which one it was. And I was specifically looking for, I think, a Call of Duty type game or a first-person shooter game. And there was a popular game out at the time, and it wasn't on the shelves. It didn't exist, it was there, but they were all sold out. And I found this cover, and I absolutely fell in love with my number 7 pick, Fable. It was, when I read that cover, I remember thinking, oh, choices, your hero evolves with you as you play. This sounds neat. I knew nothing about Fable. Again, internet was sparse those days, guys. So I knew nothing about Fable. I didn't know what to expect. I took it home, and there was something very satisfying about sniping a bandit with a bow and arrow and then kicking his head down the path. Now, again, I was a young teenage boy. I thought it was great. The romance scenes were great. The way you could just go around town making people fall in love with you and follow you, and the choices you could have, and the way your character evolved was tremendous. And then Fable 2 came out, and I put so many hours into Fable 2. I absolutely adored Fable 2. I've played both as like a uber good guy and as a just degenerate of the people. Really, really enjoyed Fable 1 and 2. I don't talk about Fable 3. Maybe someday I'll go back and give it another shot, but Fable 3 was one of my biggest disappointments in video gaming history, and so I'm not going to talk about it. But Fable 1 and 2 100% belongs in my top 7. I mean, this was a role-playing, open, not really open world, but kind of felt open back in the Xbox days. But it was a open, fun experience of a game that really gave you the feeling of kind of choice and to some extent consequence. Truly, truly enjoyed Fable. Before we move into the next 3, I do want to mention some honorable mentions, some that just didn't quite make the list, but do belong in my gaming repertoire as games that had a big impact on me. If I did a top 15, most of these games would have been in it. But these were games that just didn't quite break the top 10. For me, the number 11, or the first honorable mention, is Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. Now, I know that sounds crazy because it's Red Dead Redemption 2, for me, is one of the most beautiful games in the last generation. I think it set the bar for what a game could be with the details and the beauty. But both Red Dead 1 and 2, for whatever reason, I only got about 20 or 30 hours into each one and kind of got sucked away by another game. Owe it to myself still to play Red Dead 1, Red Dead 2, and go through the story. Almost certainly this game would be on my list once I did that. I'm pretty certain of it. But Red Dead is just right there on the cusp. And the reason I didn't put it on the game is it was 2 reasons, really. Number 1, I just felt like I never really gave it enough time, and that in itself is an indication as to the game. And then number 2, Red Dead 2 really, I kind of felt like pushed you to be the bad guy. And I like to play as the hero. I like to be the winner. At the end of the day, Red Dead probably belongs on this list, probably would eventually become part of this list if I could just find a way to few more hours and get some time in it. For me, one game that was really close to breaking the list but just couldn't quite get there is Roller Coaster Tycoon. I especially like the deluxe edition. There was something special about the little dudes. After you build a great roller coaster, they come out and they jump up and down and the throw up on the paths and just operating a park. I still play Roller Coaster Tycoon to this day. In fact, I've got it loaded on my laptop. I'm about to take a work trip. It's one of those games that can play on my laptop easily. I'll play it in the hotel room. It's something that I'll be doing while I'm traveling for work when I'm bored in the hotel. Of course, other games were Age of Empires. I actually can hear like the priest as they're converting the Habana, Habana, and then Habadakis. Anyway, that game was great. It just was it was a little too fast paced for me. I like games that are a little bit slower. I used to get a little bit stressed when the game started going. My guys are all over the place. I couldn't control, and it became too much. Another one that I had a hard time not putting on this list, but definitely deserves an honorable mention, is the Mario Kingdom. Side-scrolling Super Mario Brothers to Mario 64, Mario Galaxy. Those are great games. Probably deserve a spot in my 10, but I just don't know what game I would kick out to put this game in. So again, if I was doing a top 15, hands down, this game would be in it. A couple other games that I really like. The Sims was a great game. Just couldn't quite get it on the list. Road Rash from the old Sega days. Need for Speed, Hot Pursuit. Those were some games that I enjoyed. Gran Turismo to some extent. Never been a real racing guy, but those games were in there. I played a lot of Flight Simulator once upon a time. Those were the kind of games that just couldn't quite break the list, but were, are games that made up some of my gaming history. So now we go back to number 6. Now, number 4, 5, and 6 on this list, I feel like are very interchangeable. I don't know if I have them even in the right order today, but at number 6, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this video right now if it wasn't for Ark Survival Evolved. And I guess to some extent, Ark Survival Ascended. We'll see on that one. The verdict is still out, but we'll just call it Ark as the series. Will obviously always hold a special place. Ever since that very first playthrough of Ark, I began this YouTube journey a year ago, started with my very first time playing Ark, built a great community, made a lot of friends along the way, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Ark. So I have to give them a huge shout out, a big thanks. They are definitely got to be in the top 10. They're just outside of the top 5. Maybe as I play more maps, it'll move up the list, but Ark Survival Evolved / Ascended, somewhere special. The dinos, the first, it was really for me the first entry into a survival game. I guess you could say that, although the next one you could argue is a survival game too, I guess. Will always be special for me. Definitely belongs in my top 10, which takes me to number 5. No Man's Sky. I was part of the hype train. I was so excited when they first announced it back in 2012. I wondered what the game was going to become. I watched the interviews. I was so excited with everything that Sean Murray was presenting and saying was going to be in this game and all the fun that we were going to have. And I'm a big space guy. I love space. So I was super excited for No Man's Sky. When it first launched, I got about 40 hours in. I wasn't going to say it was this terrible experience. I still enjoyed it. It just wasn't everything I had hoped it would be. And after about 40 hours, I put it down, and it would have gone off into obscurity and probably never been mentioned in a top 10 list again. But Hello Games, Sean Murray, buckled down, and they put out update after update after update after update, and every update brought me back, brought me more hours, to a point where eventually that was the only game I played for probably a year. And maybe that's why I got pulled away from Red Dead Redemption, because I was totally into No Man's Sky. It was a tremendous experience for me, and it still is a great game. I haven't been back since, I think, the Overseer update. The last few updates haven't really dragged me back in. Maybe the next one will. I've got a fellow creator, Hop, who's playing No Man's Sky right now. I'm loving watching his first time playing. There's a link in the description below if you guys want to see that. But I love watching him struggle with the game, and I'll probably hop on with him at some point. But critical as I am of them, I have put in a lot of time in No Man's Sky. Okay, and that takes us to number 4. For me, this belongs in number 4 mainly because of the number of hours I sank into this game. Of all my games, this is the game that has the most logged hours if you were to look at my Steam account or compare it to my Xbox numbers, and that is Sid Meier's Civilization. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at number 4, 5, or 6. Sid Meier's Civilization is one of those games that has a significant number of hours on it. Now, a big part of that is because I run it in the background. So during COVID, when I was working from home, I could actually run it on the background while I did my work, and then during my lunch breaks or on short breaks, I could jump in, play a turn or 2 or 4 or 5. I could be cleaning the house, come back to my computer, play a couple turns, and then go back and do some other stuff, and then come back. So Civilization was a game that just consistently ran. That was on my computer, so I have like 1,400 hours on that, which is by far more than any other game. But I absolutely love Civilization. I'm a huge fan of doing a domination run where you just absolutely obliterate your opponent. Now, I typically, again, you'll find in most of my games, all single player so far. Very little multiplayer experience. I'm just not a big fan of it. I love kind of choose your own journey, RPG, create your own game experience. And so for me, Civilization, single player was that game. Before we move into our top 3, there are a couple games that I've not played that I have a feeling could one day potentially break this top 10 that I just wanted to throw out there so you understood why they weren't on my list. And I'm going to rapid fire these, I think, somewhat quickly. So we'll start with Baldur's Gate 3. I suspect that'll be on here. Hogwarts Legacy looks like it's an amazing game. It needs a true playthrough. Subnautica, I haven't given it enough time, but it definitely seems like a game that could potentially break this, or it seems like a good game. Pal World looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Enshrouded looks great. Conan, 7 Days to Die. I've never played a single Final Fantasy game. There are definitely a lot of games I have never played that probably potentially could one day be in a top 10 in a future video. So moving to number 3. This is definitely, for me, was a series of games that just I absolutely love. I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of, and that's the Fallout series by Bethesda. My order of operations is probably Fallout 3 / New Vegas, then Fallout 4. I guess I would go probably 3 just because that was my first entry into it and I really fell in love with the series. And then Fallout New Vegas did Choice and Consequence so well. And then Fallout 4, while it did have its issues, for me was still a really great game. Now, I never got into Fallout 76. I don't like multiplayer, as you can tell. So it was definitely single player for me. Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 70, or Fallout 4. There's just something special about going into an abandoned building, clearing it out of raiders and various people, discovering new things. I always felt like they did exploration really well, gave you a really great world to live in. I could see if I had played a lot of Red Dead Redemption that Red Dead would be right up here. If, in my opinion, if I could give it enough time, I have a feeling Red Dead would be right up here. But right now for me, Fallout 3, New Vegas, and then Fallout 4 sit in that number 3 spot for me. Number 2 for me, again, another Bethesda, is the Elder Scrolls series. I absolutely adore Skyrim, Oblivion, and then Morrowind. My very first experience in the Elder Scrolls was Morrowind. I had no idea what it was. I think it was one of my niece's friends brought it over and they were playing and I kind of was like, oh, what's going on? I said, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And they were younger than me, so they were certainly no help as I ran around and tried to figure it out. And I just didn't really fall in love with it. And my buddy's like, hey, have you played Morrowind? And I was like, oh, yeah, my niece had it over the other day. He goes, man, it's such a great game. And he started talking to me about it. And there was things I didn't even know existed in the game. And then I started to play it and I was like, oh, this is great. Then I played Oblivion and I was like, oh, this is tremendous. I loved Oblivion. I thought Oblivion was phenomenal. And then, of course, Skyrim, which is an amazingly beautiful game that has so much to do and so much to experience and so much lore. You can get lost into it. I am very excited for what they're going to do next. I am nervous after Starfield and Fallout 76 and Fallout 4, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to mess up the Elder Scrolls and they're going to make it a great game. For me, the Elder Scrolls, hundreds and hundreds of hours, truly love the experience of the entire, of all their games that I've played. I'm a big fan. I like fantasy, swords, magic stuff, so that really hits home for me. Last but not least, the number 1 game. Sometimes I even surprise myself that this is number 1, but there's something special about it, and that is the entire Mass Effect trilogy. I got into Mass Effect after all 3 games had launched. I actually bought the trilogy, or I got for Christmas the trilogy disc, and I started with Mass Effect 1. I put that in. And I kind of sped through 1 because it was an Xbox game and I was on my Xbox 360 and it just wasn't real great. Then I played 2, and the transfer from 1 to 2, bringing your character, his choices, his decisions, his loot to some extent into number 2, for me felt groundbreaking. I mean, this was amazing. What I did in the first game is actually going to impact what I did in the second. And then the story just gets better and better and better. And then I did it again from the second to the third. Tremendous game. I love the trilogy. It's impacted me in ways I wouldn't expect. It's not open world, but it is RPG. There's romance options. There's great battle in it. At times you feel like a Jedi because you're using the Force, what their version of kind of the Force, I guess. Biotics and the tech, and it was a tremendous game. Now, I didn't love the ending on the third one, but the DLC I think fixed that to some extent and made it better. And then recently with the Legendary Edition coming out, I went back, replayed one with a upgraded, they remastered it, fixed the Mako, made the game better, put some elements into it like instead of getting the cooldown and the way the reticle works for shooting, they fixed some of that, made the game better, and I played all three again. I sunk well over another 100 hours into the trilogy. And again, even knowing how the game ends, I was still felt emotional and connected to Shepard and connected to these characters. And I play it. Nobody dies in my experience if I can help it. Certainly you have to make certain decisions, and obviously people do die. I mean, especially, that very first, and I'm not going to spoil it, but some of those very first decisions that are very impacting where you're saving one crew member or the other. Just absolutely love the choice, the consequence, and the growth of the character, the story, the gameplay. For me, Mass Effect, the trilogy, right now sits as the #1 game in my top 10 gaming. But I would love to hear from you guys. Tell me down in the comments below, what are your favorite games? What games did you like? Which ones did I miss? Which ones should I be adding to my list of games I need to play? Again, I'm a bit of a casual gamer. I don't have as much time to game as I did in my youth. I wish I had the time machine and could pause time at times, but unfortunately it doesn't exist. So I only get so much time to play. So I do try to balance that to the best I can. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some of your favorite games? What are games that I missed? Which ones am I crazy? Love to hear from it. Of course, if you're new here and you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel out. We are hoping to hit over 2,000 subscribers this year and to continue to grow this channel. I've got a lot of fun things coming, more videos like these, some of these games that I've talked about. I'm going to go back and do kind of another run through and maybe record and do kind of a retrospective type look at it. Then, of course, some of the games I haven't played we're going to be talking about. So lots of things to come on this channel. Make sure you hit those thumbs up button. We really do appreciate it. It helps the channel out greatly. But guys, thank you so much for coming on this journey. I really do appreciate it. I wanted to do something a little different, share with you kind of a little bit about my experience, some games that I played, what's really impacted me as a gamer. And of course, guys, until next time, have a great day.